Hi, I'm Jim the Money Man. This is part 3 in our series about Monday.com formulas. In our last video, I talked about advanced formula editing, how to protect your formulas, how to deal with functions that return an error when they get a null value and divide by zeros. I gave you some advice on nested ifs and some tips on debugging complex formulas. In this video, I'm going to talk about the string functions, date and time functions, and something called a fake status. Now, this is important. The next video is going to be about undocumented functions that are incredibly powerful. I found them as I was doing research for these videos, and you will not believe they're amazing. If you use Monday formulas at all, I guarantee you will want to have these in your bag of tools. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified of future videos. I guarantee you will want to see this video. I'm not one to overstate things, and I guarantee you this is going to be amazing. All right, I've had my coffee. I'm ready to go. I hope you are too. Let's get started. One of the fun and helpful things about Monday is the use of colorful status columns. They can be used to identify where things are, and it's easy to read what the situation is with that. So it would be great if we were able to control those with more logic. And one way we can do that is by using a fake status. Now, I've defined a fake status here. And basically in this formula, what I'm looking at is if the status is not equal to done, then I want to do this. If the number of days left from now until the due date is greater than the number of days of effort required, then everything is okay. If not, then it's at risk. So I can save this and we get this. But it's not super easy to tell immediately which things are a problem and which things are not. So what we can do is come in here into the descriptions, and you can do the command space on Apple machines and the Windows key and a period, and you can bring up the emojis. Now, what I like to use are these square boxes that have colors in them. So what we want is, okay, I'm going to say those are green, and I'm going to put 3 in there, and then I'm going to come back over here. Actually, let's just do this. Let's just copy this, copy that, and paste it 3 times. And then at risk, I want to put that same thing, and we'll do red on those. And we'll copy that. Well, let's get out of this. Okay. Copy that and put that here as well. And if there's no date, then that's a problem as well, because we have a due date that we need. And so we're going to use black for that. And you can obviously use these however you want, but this is what I'm doing. Okay, so now we save that, and I put a lot of color in there so it spaces it out. Anyway, so but there you go. All right, so on the date functions, they're fairly straightforward. I'll just walk through them, and it'll be very simple. So today and now are just return the current date and time. They're updated when the board is refreshed or when you change the formula, and they produce exactly the same thing. So today and now are exactly the same values. Year, month, and day return exactly that, the year, the month, and the day. You can use them independently, of course. Hour, minute, and second for those values, date values that have times associated with them. These will return those components. Date will construct a full date by including the individual components, year, month, and day. Days and work days are exactly the same. You get the end date and the start date, and it tells you how many days are included in that. Work days works the same way, except that it excludes weekends. Add days and subtract days does exactly what it sounds like. You have a date, and then you can add or subtract a particular number of days and get a new date. Both of these will accept negative values. So you can subtract days by using add days and just putting in a negative number. Workday is not documented, but seems like a lot of people know about it. It works basically the same as add days, except you cannot use negatives. But what it does is it will take a date and then add a particular number of days to it, and will skip weekends. Hours difference is basically for, you can use it for dates that have times associated with it, or hour columns. But the format is the difference between these two components, and it has to be in the form of hours, minutes. If there's more following this, it ignores it. So you could have hours, minutes, seconds, and it will only look at the first two components, and it assumes that whatever unit of measure this is 60 times that. So, and then it does the math and then it returns it in a normalized fashion of hours and minutes. And then the last thing is format date. Now you can use this to extract components similar to year, month, day, but you can also use it just to make it human readable. These include all kinds of different codes, which I am leaving in the description, that are associated with dates and times. You can also do quarters, and there's a whole list of them. There's like 30 different codes that you can use to format dates, which I am leaving in the description. And that's basically it. All right, so now I'm going to run through some string formulas, and I'm just going to open this up. What I want to do is kind of walk through each of the individual functions that are related to strings. Trim will take the leading spaces, the trailing spaces, and anytime there's more than one space occurring in the middle, it will shorten that to one space. So that's this long string here becomes just AB space C. Lower will change everything to lowercase. Upper changes everything to uppercase. Left will give you the number of characters on the leftmost portion of the string that you're looking at. Now I'm using constants here, but these can be column names, of course. And then right gives you what is on the right, the rightmost portion based on the number of characters that you specify. Okay, now mid. This is probably one of the most used ones. Basically what I'm saying is I want to start at 2 and I want 3 characters. So that will give me BCD in this example. Now, if I want the entire thing to the right of it, I don't have to be exact. So I can just put 99 or 999 or whatever is needed to get the whole rest of this string. All right, replace. Replace will take a section similar to mid-string, to the mid-string function, and replace it with whatever you specify. So here's the syntax. I want to take this string starting in position 2, and the next one character, I want to replace that with this. So on this one, I'm going to start at B. I'm going to take one character, which is B, and I'm going to replace it with 1, 2, 3. So I have A, 1, 2, 3, C, D, E, F. Okay, so now we can take more characters and replace it with less. So in this example, I'm starting at 2. I'm taking 4 characters and replacing it with only 1. So now I get A1F. The opposite is also true. As a matter of fact, you don't even have to specify a number of characters to replace. So in this example, I'm using 0 as the number of characters that I want to replace. And what that effectively does is inserts this portion of the string into this one at this location. So I get A, 1, 2, 3, and then the rest. Okay, substitute. So substitute will actually do a search. It's kind of like combining search and replace. So what it does is it looks for any occurrence of this character and replaces it with this. So if I have this string and I look for B and I replace it with X, I get that. The number of characters doesn't have to be the same. So I can replace B here again with 2 characters and I get that. Well, made it little. I would get that. Okay. Now, one thing that's important is you can't replace with a null string. In some languages or in some instances of substitute, like in Google Sheets or Excel, this is something you can do where you can replace it with a null string. And that is not the case in Monday. Now, we do have a way to deal with that, but it's a little bit more complicated, and I'll be showing that in future. Okay, search. Now, search is really simple. It basically says, I want you to search this string for this. So I'm going to search this long string here for C, and it finds it in character number 3. So that's what it will return. It returns a number. You can also specify a starting position. So I want, in this case, I'm starting on position 4. So I'm going to start at D and I'm going to search for that. So that returns 7. Now, one of the things that's important to note is that you will get an error if what you're looking for doesn't exist. So you have to always make sure if there's any possibility of it not existing, you have to make sure that it does exist. And here's an example where I'm doing that. So I want to have, I'm going to search this string for X. And if it's found, I want to say found. If it's not, then I want to say not found. So the way I do that is I search this string and then I append whatever it is that I want. Let's space that out a little bit easier to read. I append whatever I'm searching for, and then I can compare that to the original string length. So if it finds it and it's less than the length of this, then it did find it here and not where I appended it. So if it's less than that, less than the length of the original string, then it was found. Otherwise, it's not found. So here's one thing I had to splice in because I forgot, and it's relatively important if you want to do the substitute command, or you need that. So this is the basic thing, and if I put a space here so we can see, when I save that, all of the B's are replaced by spaces, and that makes sense. But what I forgot to tell you is I can also specify which occurrence I want to change. So if I don't put anything, it changes everything that it finds. So I can say 1, and it will change the first occurrence. And if I change it to 2, it changes the second occurrence, etc. All right, so there's some basics on strings and the string functions. So now I'm going to show you how to put some of this to use. Here's the contact name with the first name, nickname or middle name, and the last name. And what I want to do is basically put the last name first. And there's a lot of ways to do this, of course, but let's take a look at this particular example. So what I have is I'm going to take the mid string of the contact, and I basically want to start at the second space. So I'm going to look at the last name here, and I'm going to search for the space, which is the delimiter. in the contact, and the place that I want to start is one after the first space. So I'm going to search that again, add 1 to it, and that's where I'm going to start. Then I want to add 1 to that and return all of the characters to the right. So that's what this portion does. Then I'm concatenating a comma and a space, and then concatenating again. And there's no reason for this space except for us to be able to read it a little bit easier. And then we have the left string, which is basically we're looking for the first name. So we're going to take the contact name and we're going to start, or excuse me, we're going to take all of the left through where the first space is -1, because we don't want the space. Now, I'm actually adding a space here at the end, but this is the right way to do it anyway. So anyway, okay, so there we go. So that's the first name. Now we want to include the middle name or the nickname. So we're gonna take the mid string of the contact. We're gonna look for the first space, and that is we're gonna skip the space. So we're gonna add 1, and we're gonna start at that position, and then we need to figure out how many characters we want. So basically, we want to look for where the next space is. So again, we're going to do the same kind of thing where we did up in the beginning, where we're searching for the second one. So we're going to search for the space starting at where this 1 plus the first one. And then we're going to subtract from wherever it finds that. We're going to subtract the first piece. So that gives us the number of characters that we actually want to include. All right, so that works. Now, so here's the contact. This one looks exactly the same, but we get a different result. The reason that is because there is spaces embedded in here. Now, if I click on this, we can see that there's 2 spaces there, there's 2 spaces there, and we can even add 1 at the beginning. It's a mess, right? So the easy way to deal with that is to come back in here and just put trim on each of those pieces. So it will remove leading and trailing spaces and change all of the other spaces to just 1 if there's more than 1 in the same spot. Now, let's take a look at this example. We're getting an error in this situation because there are no spaces at all. And then on this one, we're getting an error because there's only 1 space. So I want to deal with that. Now we can come back in here, and as I mentioned earlier, the search has to find whatever it is you're searching for. Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 searches. So here's an example where putting that search in there and forcing it to exist is going to be a little bit complicated. But what we can do is we can solve this problem and these 2 problems by using a interim formula. So if I come here, oops, I don't want to do that. All right, so if I come here and expand this formula here, so I have contact 2, and basically all that this is doing is I'm trimming the contact, and then if I need it, I'm going to add 2 spaces to the end. Okay, so it always will have 2 spaces in it. So we trim the contact, and then we use repeat, which can be, you can use repeat to include characters. It will repeat the space, the number of characters that's here. And I want 2 minus however many are already there. One way to count how many are already there is to substitute the space with something else. Now, in this case, what I'm doing is I'm replacing 1 space with 2 underscores. Now this could be anything, it doesn't really matter here, but it's just what I'm using. So we're going to take that and we're going to take the length of that and subtract the length of just it trimmed. So that will basically give me how many spaces are actually existing. So let's say that there's no spaces like with Jane. So it's going to repeat spaces at the end, 2 characters. All right. And so that's what this is doing. So if we come back in here now into our formula and we change, instead of using contact, we just use contact 2. The easiest way, if I do 2 and it takes this and I hit enter, it gives me an extra curly bracket and I don't want that. So the easiest way is to just hit escape. Go back here to, oops, I missed a couple. All right, I'll be right back. All right, so I've changed all of those to contact 2, and I'm going to save this. Now we don't get an error, but we also are still getting weird results. Now this one's working. This one is still working, of course, but we're getting weird results on these 2. So what we really want to do is to see if we have this situation and then do a special formula for that. And let's come back in here and remind me, this is how we get how many characters, how many spaces are there. So we're just going to take this portion right here and copy that. Okay, so we're going to copy that, and that gives us the number of spaces. So now if I come back here and I say at the beginning here, all right, so here we have, and if the number of characters and the number of spaces in the string, the original string is 2, then we want the formula that we have, right? And I'm going to just say, otherwise it's going to be equal to nothing. Okay, so now this is working for both of these situations, but in this one there, it's not doing what we want. So let's go back in here, and we're getting these characters. Now this, we're assuming that we either have 0, 1, or 2 spaces in the name. Yeah. So one way we could do this is to add additional ifs and do it that way. But another way, since we know this is always going to be that situation, we could use a switch instead. Let's change this to switch, and we want to use this as our condition. And so if it equals 2, then we want to do that, right? If we have 0, we just want to return the string itself. So we're going to just trim it. Actually, we don't need that, do we? Because contact 2 is, well, it has this 2 spaces. So we'll do this trim contact. Okay. Okay, so if it's 0, we're going to use trim. If it's 0, we're going to use the trim. And if it is 1, what do we want in that case? Okay, so if it's 1, then we basically want to take the first part and put that at the end, and then put the end part at the beginning. So here's what we're going to do. We have this switch, which is looking at the number of spaces that is in the text, the original text. And based on that, if there's 0, it's using this formula. If there's 1, it's using this formula. And of course, all the spacing in the returns is okay. It doesn't do anything, but it makes it easier for us to read. And then if there's 2, then it does our original formula. right? So I saved this, and then I took a look, and that looks a little weird. But um, instead of directly trying to figure that out, which is pretty simple, but just to show you, if we put substitute up here and then add down here, if there's a space, I want to replace it with, or substitute a underscore. Yes, I want to replace it with an underscore. So save that. So now I can see that all of these are looking good, except for there's a space after do before the comma, and I don't want that. So I'm going to come back in here, and in that one space situation, basically I'm taking the mid string of the contact to, which contact to, remember, has an extra space here at the end so that our searches don't fail. So what we want to do is add a trim to this portion right here. And there we go. We could change the number of characters that we're including, but that's more complicated. It's easier just to trim it when we're done. Okay, so let's save that. And now we have what we want. So we can come back in here now and take out our substitute. Save it, and everything's good. Now, if we want, we can hide this column, collapse it, or even go in to the hidden columns and actually hide it. All of that works. I'm just going to go ahead and squish it as much as I can without hiding it or collapsing it. So, oh yeah, one more thing I wanted to add. So in addition to what we did there, it is possible we could come in here and take this entire string, copy it, and come back into our original formula, and every place we have contact to, so in all of those places, replace it with the formula that we created. But obviously this is going to start to look extremely complicated. So even if you want to do that, it can be a very good practice to get everything working first. Because once we do that, the level of complexity becomes exponentially greater. I'm Jim, the Money Man. Till next time.